Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar session, if anybody's got any sort of technical challenges in viewing this session at all, what I highly recommend is to go through the usual kind of troubleshooting that we all tend to go through if something doesn't work for us first time around with technology. So that is, if you are tuned in on your desktop computer or a laptop, feel free just to hit that little squiggly arrow button, which is the refresh icon on your web browser page now. Alternatively, if you are tuned in on your mobile or a tablet device, feel free to come out of the YouTube app and then click back on the link that you received for this webinar session, and hopefully everything should be working for you. Now, if everything is already working for you, you are already ahead of the game, which is great to kind of, which is always kind of great to kind of a great kind of position to be in. Something that I recommend to you all to have throughout the course of this session is just a pen and paper on hand, just so you can kind of jot down some notes as we progress throughout the course of this session. Now, one thing to let you know of about this this webinar session is that live captioning is available. So you will be able to have captions throughout the course of this webinar session. So if you were to hover over onto this YouTube video, you will see that there is a little box icon with the letters CC inside of them. If you toggle that on, then you can actually have captioning available in real time. So feel free to kind of use that functionality if you wish to throughout the course of this session. Okay, so I hope everyone's all geared up and sorted for this webinar session. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session, all about how you can build engaging presentations. My name is Rikesh. I'm going to be your webinar presenter, taking you through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll kick off with a little bit about me first. So I'm a trainer for Google's Digital Skills Program, Google Digital Garage, as well as I'm also a digital marketer. So I work with businesses to help them to create and to grow an online presence in order to attract more customers and clients to their business offering. And a large chunk of that does involve acquiring or trying to acquire new clients. And when it gets to a stage of acquiring new clients, that requires kind of some level of kind of presentation, whether it be kind of a conversation, whether it be kind of something like a slideshow presentation, whether it be kind of like a sales pitch. It does involve kind of elements of presentations. That's going to be kind of the theme in which we're going to be talking about. So it could kind of come at it could be kind of from an aspect of kind of career development, if you're maybe going for things like job interviews, but it could also mean from kind of a business perspective of you looking to kind of pitch ideas and or looking to kind of acquire and kind of generate more business as well. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I'd also like to introduce to you at this stage my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is Tessa. Now, Tessa is going to be our wonderful chat moderator. So you might have noticed on the right-hand side of your screen on YouTube that there is a live chat box. That is your space over the course of the next hour to drop in your comments, drop in your questions, and there will be questions that will appear on screens. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts, your comments as well, especially with a topic like presentations, because we all come at it from kind of different aspects and angles, because I'm sure many of us out there would have delivered a presentation in some shape or form over the years. I know, kind of thinking back to my school days, that I was, you know, I had to kind of stand up in front of the whole class, deliver some sort of presentation on a topic that I've kind of done a project for, and then kind of building that up into kind of my kind of working career as well. So we all kind of have different experiences that we can sort of bring to the table. So feel free to kind of share your thoughts. Feel free to kind of share your comments. Feel free to ask questions as well. And either myself and or Tessa will be able to kind of pick up on them as we go along. I know some of you have been kind of dropping in where you're tuning in from, which is great. So we've got Saeed tuning in from Hyderabad in India. Welcome to you. We've also got Mohammed tuning in from Turkey. We've also got Abby tuning in from Singapore. We've also got May from Philippines as well. So so thank you very much to you all. Everything, I really hope that kind of everything is going to be quite sort of useful for you and kind of valuable. It's kind of great to kind of see that we've got kind of an international audience. Is kind of, I guess, the power of YouTube is that it allows for that kind of facility there as well. Now, this session on build engaging presentations is one of many webinars that we actually run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering. So if you have a look down below me where I'm pointing, you'll see that there is a video description box. Contained within one of those paragraphs that you'll see in the video description box is a link to the Google Digital Garage website. And on the Google Digital Garage website, which many of you, if not all of you, would be familiar with, as you would have used the website to sign up for this webinar session, you can actually find a list of other webinar topics that you might wish to kind of sign up for that might be relevant for you, or for your business, perhaps as well. Now, these webinar sessions, just like this session, is available for you, are available for you to attend at no charge. So definitely recommend that you check out some of the other topics that we run sessions for and tune in. And the only kind of commitment from your end is just tune in on the right date and at the right time using the webinar link that you receive after sign up as well. Now, you'll also find that there's an online courses tab on the Google Digital Garage website where you'll see a list of loads of different online courses provided by Google at no charge that you can complete in your own time and at your own pace. And there is a course in particular which actually appears first on the top of the long list of online courses on that tab. And that is a course called The Fundamentals of Digital Marketing. Now, the reason why I want to mention that course is because, as well as kind of giving you that kind of holistic overview as to how digital marketing works, so how typically kind of businesses promote their products and services in the online space. So as well as gaining that knowledge, as an added bonus of that particular course, you'll actually receive a certificate from Google recognizing that you've completed that course as well. So definitely check that out. Definitely check out some of the other courses, sign up for more webinars, and generally kind of check out the fantastic resources that are available on the website. But without further ado, let's have a look at what we're covering in this session, all about how you can build engaging presentations. So in this session, we're going to be kind of taking a three-step approach, and it's going to be kind of a natural progression. So we're going to first of all kick off by looking at how do we kind of approach presentations. So thinking about kind of the preparation stage. So you might have kind of heard of that kind of age-old kind of cliche, I guess, as it is now, of if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we want to kind of avoid that. We want to make sure we do our kind of homework. We want to do our preparation. So we're going to be having a look at that first. Once we've done that, we're then going to be going through to the next part, or the next progression, which is the design stage. So how do we go about creating effective and engaging presentations, something that's going to kind of capture the attention of our audience or the people that we hope to kind of have in front of us, whether it be in person or whether it be virtually as well. And then we'll round off this session just looking at some kind of presentation skills. Now, some of these presentation skills that you that will be kind of going over, some of these skills you might already be incorporating and using in your own presentation and delivery style. And that's good because it kind of gives some kind of positive reinforcements to that. But then there might be some other skills that you think, oh yeah, do you know what? I'm going to make a note of that. I might kind of use that next time I'm kind of standing up and delivering a presentation, or I'm delivering an online presentation, perhaps virtually as well. So that's kind of the natural progression that we're going to be going through throughout this webinar session. Now, before we get going and looking at kind of the preparation stage, I want to draw your attention to this fantastic resource that you can see here on screen. So you can see here the title says Free Career Certificates Available from Google. So what this is these are essentially flexible online training programs that are provided by Google, which you can complete in your own time at your own pace. And all of these online training programs, which are in a variety of what Google have identified as both high growth and high demand sectors, such as project management, IT support, data analytics, and there's other ones out there. You can actually find out more information using the link here on screen. I'm sure that Tessa will kind of drop a link to this in the live chat for you. So once you've completed one of these courses, and you can do multiple of these courses as well, you will actually receive a Google Career Certificate. And these kind of online training programs, they're all kind of designed to help you earn job-ready skills and help you to hopefully secure or kind of be on the pathway to securing entry-level positions within those sectors. So you can find out more information about some of the online training course programs that we are kind of running, courses for, such as I mentioned, kind of data analytics. You've got user experience design. You've also got digital marketing and e-commerce as well. So there's quite a few that you can kind of check out. And if you are based in the UK, you're definitely able to kind of take advantage of this, as it kind of works through kind of like a scholarship program where Google have partnered up with various partners in the UK, so that the actual cost of actually enrolling in these online training programs is kind of taken care of. So all you do is actually just log on, and undertake these courses in kind of a set period of time. So definitely recommend that you check out this resource if you just to kind of find out more details, see whether you are eligible first and foremost, and see whether this is going to be of use to you going forward. So let's kick off this session, and I want to kick off by asking you all a question. So I want you to let me know in the chat, what's the most memorable presentation that you've experienced? Now, feel free to kind of let me know in a presentation that you sat through, either in person or virtually. And when I say memorable, it could be memorable for kind of the good reasons. So it was really something that inspired you, something that really maybe changed your life or changed your perspective on something. But it can also mean memorable from, you know, it was notoriously awful, or it was so ridiculous that it was funny. And that was memorable as a presentation as well. So feel free to kind of let me know the most memorable presentation that you've experienced in the live chat. And it's only fair that I kind of share my kind of most memorable presentation that I've experienced. So I'll give you kind of an example of two of them. So I'll give you an example. So I guess in person, something that always kind of springs to my mind that really kind of that I find as a memorable presentation was when I was studying science at school. For those of you tuning in from the UK, it was kind of during my GCSE period. So I think when you're aged about kind of 15, 16 years old. My science class, was predominantly made up of people who either played sports or played for the school sports teams, or they were interested in sports, whether it be kind of football or tennis or cricket or other kind of sports out there. I mean, I kind of fell into kind of the latter category. I wasn't good enough to make the sports team. It's still a little bit of a sore point for me. But I was still naturally interested in sports, and that was kind of the main kind of demographic of the students of that particular science class. And this is something which the science teacher, knew very well. So he actually kind of understood this factor. And what he did was, throughout the whole 2 years that I was in the science class, is that whenever he was going over kind of important concepts, something that kind of is forming quite a large chunk of kind of the syllabus, and something that's going to be or quite likely to come up in the exam, is he would not only kind of go through the scientific process, but he will also run it back and go through that same process again, but kind of use analogies based in kind of the sports world. So I remember one of the times he kind of went through the process of photosynthesis. But then once he went through that process, he actually went back and then he went through photosynthesis, and he started to give certain parts of the photosynthesis process kind of labels, such as, right, this part is, let's say this is the attacker, this is the goalkeeper, this is the defender, and kind of relating it to football or to kind of soccer. And that was something that really kind of resonated with me. So when I kind of sat there in the exam hall, and I saw a question pop up on the paper about photosynthesis, my mind went straight back to that science class that I sat in, when my science teacher was giving that analogy. And that really helped me to kind of answer that question. So that was very memorable for me. Now, that's kind of a presentation in person that I found very kind of useful in general. Now, in terms of a presentation kind of online, I'm sure many of you would have kind of watched perhaps kind of TED Talk presentations, either on the TED website or through kind of YouTube. And that's something that really kind of that's something that kind of really kind of generally kind of resonates with me, because they're always kind of interesting topics. And I remember one which was presented by an American author called Simon Sinek, which was called Start With Why. And that was a really kind of it was a real interesting presentation that kind of resonated with me. And that was something, the reason why it resonated was because obviously he was talking about a topic that I was interested in generally, but also he used kind of a flip chart, and he used just kind of drawings just to illustrate his points. And that's something that kind of made it very memorable for me. So they're just kind of a contrast and kind of two presentations that I found memorable, one in person and one virtually. So let me know throughout the course of this session what you kind of found very memorable in general. But yeah, so let's have a look at some of your comments here. So Saeed has mentioned not any presentation in particular, but generally kind of videos in general. Yeah, so feel free to kind of cast your mind back, Saeed, to kind of maybe YouTube videos that you've kind of watched recently and kind of think, oh yeah, this was interesting, or yes, I picked this up. It could even be a productivity video. I like to kind of watch productivity videos. So how can I be more productive in my general working life? Like, can I set kind of timers? Can I set myself kind of short goals? Can I work in bursts? And there's YouTube channels based around kind of productivity as well. So kind of cast your mind back to some of those presentations as well, or some of those videos essentially. Sheree has mentioned presenting to C-levels for the first time. To pass my probation period at my first job, it was nerve-wracking. Yeah. So it was interesting that you say nerve-wracking as well, because when we get to kind of the final part of this session, we'll be kind of looking at our presentation skills. And sometimes it's not just a case. It's not just a case of kind of overcoming nerves, because the one thing I always say to anybody when they are presenting is it's fine to have nerves, because it kind of shows that you care about what you are going to be talking about and presenting about. But what you want to do is you want to harness that kind of nervous energy and kind of convert that energy into something quite positive, something that's going to kind of give you confidence, give you that kind of fuel, whether it be on stage or whether it be in front of a webcam going forward as well. So thank you very much for kind of sharing that as well there as well, because it's something which sometimes we don't necessarily think about. What's kind of something that was very memorable that you sat through or that you watched online. And the reason why I want to kind of kick off with this question is because we present for a multitude of reasons. And even kind of these memorable presentations that you might be recalling right now, all kind of have kind of purpose behind them. So in general, there's kind of three main kind of reasons why we tend to present. And you can see them here on screen. So we either present to communicate a message, we either present to persuade our audience into a certain way of thinking, or we also present to instruct our audience as well. To kind of, so if you kind of think about the likes of kind of sales types of presentations, or kind of even television adverts to a certain extent as well. Now we also present for a couple of other reasons. So we maybe present to inspire. And we also tend to present to entertain as well. So think about kind of the entertainment industry as well. We tend to kind of present for those purposes as well. So I want you to kind of keep all these kind of reasons in mind in terms of the general kind of reasons and purposes why we tend to present, because I'm going to be showing you a short TED clip here. So it's a short 1 minute video, and it will just kind of it's just kind of explaining a little bit about what this TED Talk presenter is going to be discussing about in their presentation. So as you're kind of listening through, I want you to think: is the presenter trying to instruct? Are they trying to communicate a message? Are they trying to persuade? So just take a look at this.
What you're doing right now at this very moment is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week. It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking, and in the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope that you found that kind of interesting. Now, that particular TED Talk presentation is only about 3 and a bit minutes long, the whole presentation. Now, that clip is only a minute. So we just took kind of a short excerpt of that particular presentation. And I'm sure Tess will be able to kind of drop in a link for the full kind of 3 and a bit, 4-minute video that there is for that presentation. But the reason why we kind of picked that excerpt was because it kind of got the main kind of gist and the main kind of messaging across of that particular TED Talk topic. Now, as you were kind of going through, if you were thinking, well, the presenter here was looking to communicate a message, you'd be correct. If you thought that the TED Talk presenter was getting us to persuading us to be more active, you'd be correct. If you thought that the TED Talk presenter was instructing us to be more active, to have things such as walking meetings as well, then you'd be correct as well. So there is going to be natural overlap between the reasons why I present. So there's not always just going to be a clear right where, I'm getting up on stage to communicate a message. That's it. A lot of the time you are not only communicating, but you're also persuading. You might also be instructing a little bit. You might throw in a little bit of entertainment as well. So there's a lot of kind of overlap. But the one thing that I hope that you would have picked up from not only this presentation, but also some of the memorable presentations that you mentioned earlier on as well, is that the really effective presenters, they not only deliver a presentation, what they do is that they tell a story. So storytelling is very, very much kind of a powerful tool. And it's something that as presenters, we should be leaning upon as much as possible, because as humans, we're invested in the power of storytelling. It's the reason why we watch episode after episode after episode of a really engaging television show on one of our favorite streaming services providers, right? It's the reason why we go to the movies, because we're invested and interested in the storyline. So, for example, for me, I was kind of like a little bit of a late bloomer to the Marvel superhero movies, and I was kind of watching them kind of a little bit out of order. I was just watching them very sporadically, and then some of my friends told me, right, Rikesh, you actually need to watch it in a specific kind of timeline order so that you understand it. You understand the continuity going into the final movie. And that's what I did. I kind of went through a bit of a movie marathon. I kind of watched pretty much all the movies before it got to the final movie. And when it got to the final movie, everything sort of pieced together. Everything made sense. So every kind of little kind of post-credit scene was useful for the following movie. And it kind of moved on from there. So there's kind of elements of storytelling, even though it might not be a large part of certain stories, and it's just maybe certain elements, that continuity aspect was something that kept me engaged, and as an audience member in general. Now, there are different types of storytelling that we can do. So there are essentially kind of 4 basic story types that have essentially been kind of identified. These are kind of based upon the works of Christopher Booker, who kind of identified these kind of main 4 brackets here. So you've got kind of your origin type of story. I like to kind of refer to this as kind of your classic kind of Drake type story. So to kind of quote one of Drake's kind of lyrics, you kind of started from the bottom, but now you're here. So it's something like, I started my marketing business with a laptop in my garage and now have workspaces in 30 countries across the world. You've then got kind of your future vision type story. So my marketing business is growing and my goal is to have 30 offices in 30 countries worldwide. So where you see yourself in so many years time. You've then got a failure and success type of storytelling as well. So with failure and success type of storytelling, this is something which you might have heard of if you kind of follow some well-known kind of business kind of influencers online, or kind of entrepreneurs in general. They generally tend to talk about their failures, because what they're doing with that is they're looking to hopefully take you on a journey when they're telling you their story. So they're kind of talking about, right, okay, I was failing, I was struggling to make X amount of money, and then this was my trajectory to kind of climb to the top. And it's nice to kind of take people on that journey, because you're able to really kind of express the feelings that you had at that time from failure, and then kind of contrast that with your with the success feelings that you have as well. And then you've got kind of the realization type of stories as well. So this is kind of like your light bulb stories. So I was cleaning out the garage over the weekend, and then I had kind of like a bit of a light bulb, or kind of like a brainwave that thought, I want to set up a business doing this. So there's different types of storytellings, but the one thing to note with storytelling is we want to use different types of stories depending upon what we are talking about and what we are presenting about in general. So for a budget report, we don't necessarily need to go into the origins of the company that we're working for. And, oh, this was founded 30 years ago and it was set up by these individuals and look at us now. You don't need to go into that. With a budget report, maybe a good type of storytelling would be something like a failure and success. So maybe talk about, right, this was these were our profits in Q1 in 2021, and these are our profits in Q1 of 2022. Perhaps as well. So you're talking about kind of failure, maybe success. Hopefully it is that way around going forward as well. Now, if it's a company update, that's where you go into kind of an origin story. So maybe you are delivering a presentation to your organization, and at the start of the calendar year or the financial year, and you've got new people who've joined your company. It's nice to kind of fill people in, tell them kind of your story, to tell them about kind of the humble beginnings, perhaps as well. And then with something like ideas pitch as well. Some of you may have kind of seen television shows such as we've got a program here in the UK called Dragon's Den. And there's kind of an American equivalent called Shark something, I believe. And all it is essentially, the basic premise is that there's a row of kind of entrepreneurs, kind of investors that kind of sat in a room, and then you get different kind of individuals that come in that kind of pitch their idea. Or pitch their kind of their product or the infancy of their product, and they're looking to kind of get investment in return for giving up a stake in their company, just to kind of get that helping hand to kind of get on the ladder and kind of maybe open up the connections and kind of get into different places with their products, for instance, going forward as well. So you want to be selective about when you use certain types of storytelling going forward. Now, a few of the important things to kind of keep in mind in this kind of preparation stage is we want to kind of answer some questions. One of those is, what's your goal? What is the reason that you are getting up on stage? What are you trying to get out of that? Or, you know, what's the reason for you getting in front of a webcam and presenting on a webcam, perhaps as well? So if we think about the TED Talk presenter, the one that we saw the video clip for earlier on, the main goal for the TED Talk presenter was that they wanted us to consider either walking meetings or generally kind of different approaches. That was their goal. That was the reason why they got up onto that TED Talk stage. We also want to think about, what do we want our audience to think? So generally, when people turn up to presentations, and we do this as well whenever we go to presentations, is that we tend to turn up. For presentations just to absorb information. But from a presenter point of view, we want to be proactive with this. We want to think about, well, what kind of seeds can we plant in people's minds? What kind of key things can we get them to kind of get their kind of brain kind of churning around in general? Like, what can we get them to kind of think about in more detail? So we want to think about that kind of aspect. And also something that goes hand in hand with about kind of thinking is also about feeling as well. So emotion is a very kind of powerful kind of tool, and especially when it comes to kind of presenting. So what do we want our audience to feel? When do we want them to feel it? So if we're talking about a failure and success story, we maybe want people to kind of feel kind of low and not very good, and maybe kind of like, oh, you know, I feel like my wit's end, you know, nothing's going right for me. Because if you're sharing that story, you're probably trying to portray that kind of feeling, that kind of emotion across. But then you're taking them on a journey to when they get to success, and they're talking about success, or you're talking about success in a failure and success story, that you want them to feel the same level of elation, same level of accomplishment, same level of achievement as you as well. Now, you might be presenting something that might be what you consider to be a little bit kind of boring or a little bit kind of mundane. And that's where you can maybe kind of use kind of the art of humor a little bit, maybe throw in a joke. It might not be a good joke, but it's something that hopefully kind of lightens the mood a little bit, because you've been talking about something rather serious for a considerable period of time. But that's something, obviously, depending on what you're presenting and the audience that you're presenting to, is very much a judgment call on your end. And also, one thing to consider is, what's the one thing that you want your audience to take away with them? Now, this is a very important question to understand, because of the fact that as humans, we have very short attention spans. So it's been kind of measured over the years that the average human attention span is roughly about 8 seconds. So 8 seconds is not a long period of time. So we've been going through this webinar session for nearly half an hour. chances are you might have kind of tuned out. You might have thought, oh, what am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to be having for dinner? What kind of work do I need to do a little bit later on? Do I need to set a reminder for something? Do I need to do something else throughout the day? What are my plans for the weekend? So your mind might have drifted, and that's fine, because that's what we generally tend to do. We have kind of rather low and kind of short attention spans, so much so that I believe that even goldfishes have longer attention spans than us. They actually have an attention span of 9 seconds. So as presenters, we want to use this information to our advantage. What's kind of the one key thing that we want to kind of impress on our audience and get them to think, if they don't really pick up too much else, as long as they're taking away this point, this information, then that's fine. I'm happy with that as a presenter going forward as well. So if you think about kind of the TED Talk presenter, the one thing that they wanted us to take away from watching that clip was that was essentially the need for us to be more active in our day-to-day lives, especially when we are working, and to be more mindful of that aspect going forward as well. Now, the final thing I want to kind of mention before we kind of get into the design stage of building an effective and engaging presentation is we want to think about kind of the structure, and what a good structure of a presentation does is that it gives it a good flow. So it makes your life easier as a presenter, because everything's kind of flowing naturally and in a smooth way. So if we think about kind of what we were discussing earlier on, that not only are we delivering a presentation, we've actually kind of progressed from delivering a presentation to actually telling a story. And what does a story structure have? A story structure has a beginning, middle, and an end. And that's what we essentially want to use as a framework when we are creating presentations. So you can see here on screen, we've got a beginning, which we've kind of labeled here as background. We've got a middle, which we've labeled here as problem and solution section. This is essentially a structure kind of framework that is used quite a lot by individuals who are kind of delivering idea pitches. Think about the likes of kind of Dragon's Den kind of programs there as well. And then we've got our ending, which is our conclusion. So you've got your beginning. This is what we're going to talk about. You've then got your middle, the main content, and then you've got your ending, which is wrapping up. So in conclusion, this is what we talk about, and these are the conclusions we picked up off the back of that as well. And this structure does give it a nice, good and nice flow to your whole presentation in general. And you can see all of this is kind of underpinned by doing thorough research, preparation, which is the stage that we've been going through so far in this session. Also planning as well. Which is through this section as well, and then also designing as well, and that's what we're going to be coming on to next. So we've gone from delivering a presentation to telling a story to now telling a story for your audience. To see where possible, a little bit like I gave you the example of my science teacher who was able to kind of ground concepts in the world of his audience. See whether you are able to do that. See if you're able to find out who you are going to be presenting in front of and use that information wisely going forward as well. So let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of questions from you also. We've got a question here from Kakwa, who's mentioned, how do you know which story type works for your audience? So what I'd say to that, Kakwa, is see which one kind of fits with what you are discussing. So you can kind of use different types of story types to tell different or to kind of relay different types of messaging. So if you wanted to talk about a company update, then yeah, something like an origin story is great. That kind of fits perfectly. If it's if you're delivering kind of a financial report or budget report, then failure and success kind of is a good go-to. Or if you are delivering an idea pitch, then kind of the realization kind of light bulb story works. But there are kind of gray areas. So you might think, oh, I don't know which category this fits into in terms of the basic story type. With that, what I'd kind of say is just see which one kind of fits and works best for you, because you might find that you start kind of writing out or kind of scripting out maybe kind of elements of a realization story and think, no, let me kind of talk more about failure and success. So it's one of those where you'll kind of start going in one direction, and then you might think, oh, let me pivot and kind of move to a certain other direction as well. But that kind of takes time. That takes experience as well. I've kind of done that when I've kind of created a presentation and I think, oh, yeah, maybe let me talk about a company update origin story. But then I think, no, it's not really relevant. Let me go to failure and success. So then I kind of pivot off of that as well. So thanks very much for that question there, Kakwa. If you've got any further questions, comments, pop them in the chat, and either myself and or Tessa will pick up on them as we go along. So let's now move on to kind of the creation or design stage on building effective and engaging presentations. Now, when it comes to presentations, there's a lot of tools out there. But with all the tools that we kind of have at our disposal, or potentially have at our disposal, whether it be paid or ones that are available at no charge, is we want to kind of use a filter to see which ones are going to be most appropriate and the best ones for us in general. So think about kind of our audience. So when you kind of are thinking about maybe a slideshow presentation tool or a flip chart or anything else like that, think about how many people are you presenting to, and whether that tool is going to be useful for that audience, for that number. Also think about the messaging that you're trying to convey. Are you able to get that eloquently across by having a whiteboard behind you and kind of annotating and drawing diagrams perhaps? Or is that something where you maybe need a screen behind you where you've created infographics that you can kind of talk through, or you've got slideshow presentation going on? And also think about kind of the tools and technology available to you. Think about kind of where you're going to be presenting. Think about the venue, especially if you are delivering in-person presentations. What's the equipment available? Do they have a projector? Do they have HDMI? Do they have a VGA connector? Do you need like an adapter as well? So all these kind of considerations come into play when it comes to deciding what sort of presentation tool, if to use a presentation tool as well. Now you can see this, which is here on screen, which is to slide or not to slide. And I find this quite sort of poetic. I guess if Shakespeare went digital, this is probably something that that would be quite sort of famous as a phrase, I guess. So should you use kind of slideshow presentation tools or not? That is the question. And with this question, what I'd urge everybody to do is look at the filters. Look at how many people you're presenting to. Is slideshow presentation software going to be able to get your messaging across effectively? And do you have the tools and technology set up to actually show a slideshow presentation in the venue that you're presenting, or even kind of online? Do you have something like a second screen available to hand perhaps as well? Now, there are kind of other options rather than kind of slideshow presentation softwares. So you've got kind of digital collaboration tools, so the likes of kind of Muriel. So if you're kind of presenting kind of as part of a team and you want different team members to present different parts, tools such as likes of Muriel are great. So you can check that out if you wanted to. You can create some fantastic infographics from a fantastic graphic design tool called Canva. And they have kind of a fantastic kind of version that you can use at no charge, and then they also have kind of a premium account that you can upgrade to at a cost as well. But Canva is also great for kind of creating some fantastic kind of web page headings, so it's great for kind of websites as well, even for things like social media posts. It's fantastic. So it's a fantastic tool in general to use. But yeah, it's a really great tool for creating things like infographics. So if you want to explain something which is a little bit more technical, but you don't want a load of text on a slide, then think about maybe creating something like an infographic perhaps as well. You've also got Slido. Slido is a fantastic kind of audience participation tool predominantly. So you can get your audience involved. So you can run kind of slideshow presentations, but interlaced within the slides is Slido slides, which are maybe kind of polls, where people can kind of scan a QR code and then answer the poll in real time, and you'll see the results for a poll in real time as well. And that really kind of can be useful for a presenter to kind of get that feedback from their audience going forward as well. Or you can use no presentation tool aids at all, or you can use kind of, I guess, the tried and tested at times, the flip chart, paper, and kind of using marker pens and kind of whiteboard with board markers perhaps as well. And there's other tools available out there for you to use. But the one that we want to just focus on in terms of presentation tools here is slideshow presentation tool. It's the one that's kind of most common. It's probably the one that pretty much everyone thinks about when they think, oh, you need to deliver a presentation on topic X. Well, how do you go about doing that? Well, that's when you think about slideshow presentation software. That's our kind of go-to in general. Now, there's a lot of slideshow presentation software out there. You've got the likes of Microsoft PowerPoint. You've got the likes of Apple Keynote. You've also got the likes of Prezi as well. So if you've never heard of Prezi, Prezi is a really useful and a little bit of a different slideshow presentation software in that it's more kind of it's more geared towards kind of the creative industry. So it's something that will really make your presentations kind of stand out. Whereby if you created let's say one slide, then what somebody can do is they can actually click into, let's say, the top left or kind of the top left of the corner of that slide, and then what will happen is you'll then zoom into kind of a micro slide within that main slide, and then you'll see other information out there, and then you can maybe dive a little bit deeper going forward as well. But it's all part of one main slide, and it's used very well by the kind of the graphics and kind of creative industry as well. And they've actually got some examples on the Prezi website if you wanted to have a look. Because I don't think I'm kind of doing it justice in terms of showing, kind of explaining how you kind of zoom into one slide and then that can zoom into another, perhaps going forward as well. So definitely check out some of the examples if you think that might be useful for you. But yeah, you've got kind of a long list of presentation tools that are out there for slideshows. So the one that we're just going to be focusing on briefly here is Google Slides. So Google Slides is very useful. You can see some benefits here on the right hand side. So it's great for working with others from a collaboration point of view. You can see that with this graphic. So different people can be working on the same slideshow presentation at the same time. So you can kind of collaborate that way. It's great for kind of backing up your work quickly because your Google Slides presentation will back up to your Google Drive. Which is really useful because I've had those scenarios whereby I'm working on a presentation and then my laptop just goes blank. And then I realized very foolishly that I forgot to plug in the laptop charger. But luckily, when I go back into Google Slides, I can actually see that everything's up to date. I can pick up where I left off on the presentation because it's kind of backing up your presentation in the background every time you add something or kind of make an amendment on your Google Slides document. It will kind of update that going forward as well. And the beauty of Google Slides is that you can access it anywhere as long as you've got an internet connection. So you can jump onto slides.google.com. You've also got the Google Slides apps that are available on kind of mobile devices that you can access going forward as well. Now, similarly to kind of other slideshow presentation softwares out there, you can choose a theme. So especially as a business, you can kind of create a theme based upon your brand's colors, which is really useful. So you have that sense of kind of familiarity throughout all your slides in general. You can also kind of use time-saving hacks as well. You can see here how to edit a master slide. So if you're looking to maybe edit the font of all the headings for all of your slides, then you can edit the master slide, as you can see with this video. Edit the font of it, edit the size, make it bold, underlined, italics, etc. And then once you've edited the master slide, this will apply to all of the headings that you've got throughout all of the other slides. So if you've got maybe 50 slides, then it will apply to all of them. So kind of a nice kind of time-saving hack there. There's probably more out there. I'm sure if you were to jump onto YouTube, you'll probably find more time-saving hacks with the likes of Google Slides and kind of other platforms perhaps as well. Now you can see here, this is the navigation bar, which I'm sure many of you will be kind of familiar with, not only with either Google Slides, but other slideshow presentation softwares out there. So things like kind of the ability to add text boxes, add shapes, lines, images as well, add backgrounds, layouts, add kind of transitions as well. So how your presentation moves from one slide to another. Does it dissolve? Does it kind of flick through from the right or come in from the left, or how does it actually appear? And then you've also got that big button, which is kind of the present button going forward as well. And you can also hit the little down arrow where it says present and actually present with presenter notes as well. So if you do have some of those nerves, I know Shreya was mentioned earlier on about it can be quite sort of nerve-wracking when you're presenting. Having something like presenter notes, especially if you've got something like your laptop independent to a second screen where you're presenting, it's nice to have that as maybe like a safety blanket going forward as well. So if you do lose your train of thought, you can actually just have a quick glance down and actually just get back on track with your presentation going forward as well. Now, some other kind of tips when it comes to kind of designing your presentation is make sure that your titles are impactful. So it's very important to kind of mention exactly what you are going to be discussing about in a presentation. You don't want to oversell and underdeliver. If anything, you want to kind of go the other way. You rather kind of undersell and actually overdeliver. So you want it that way around rather than the previous way. And this kind of reminds me actually of, like, there's a well-known kind of fence painting company or fence paint company in the UK. And their kind of slogan when they do the television adverts is, it does what it says on the tin. And that's the way I want you to kind of think about kind of presentation titles. You want to literally say, this is what I'm talking about in this presentation. So for example, the name of this webinar session is called Build Engaging Presentations, and that's what we are discussing about. So you want to kind of use short, snappy, but accurate titles for your presentations as well. Also, one thing to note is try and use as little text as possible with your presentations. So you can see the one on the left-hand side is not great. It's just a lot of information to read in that paragraph. Whereas kind of short, snappy bullet points are kind of going to be more easier on the eye for the audience, especially with kind of short attention spans that we have as humans in general as well. Because the one thing to note is, if we had everything on our slides or any other type of presentation software that we use, then there's no reason for us as presenters to be there. We could just play this, just hit play and let it go. We don't need to stand up and talk about it. We can just maybe pre-record what we need to discuss perhaps as well. So the one thing to note is, and this is more of kind of a mindset thing when it comes to presentations, is that you are the presentation. You as the individual who's standing up on stage, who's in front of the screen on a webinar session, you are the presentation. What you have beside you, whether it be slides like I've got now, or whether it be other tools, that is just kind of like a visual aid for the people that are tuning in. That's what it's there for. So it's always important to remember that you are the presentation. You kind of control everything. And that's where it's nice to just have kind of bullet points as opposed to having everything that you need to say, because otherwise there's no point as presenters being there in general. Now, some presentation top tips: be considerate of number of slides. You don't want kind of loads of slides, because that's going to essentially put a lot of people to sleep. Keep your bullet points quite concise. You don't need kind of long bullet points, because then you get into the paragraph territory that we've just spoken about there as well. Think about your font. There's some fantastic kind of calligraphy style joined up fonts that are available online, but they are hard to read. So you want to think about kind of using fonts that are easy to read for your audience. Try and vary up your content. Think about adding kind of photos, videos where possible, and where relevant in general as well. And I'll speak about pacing when we come to the final part of this session. And then also think about kind of when it comes to running online presentations, think about kind of screen sharing. Share with care, but don't overshare, is what I always say. So if you are going to be sharing maybe your web browser, you maybe want to shut down kind of the gazillion tabs that you have open. That's, for me, it's kind of a little bit of a bugbear of mine when people have got like loads of tabs on their web browser page. I really hate that. I like kind of more of the clean look, but just kind of close them down, or just put them in another window which is not going to be shared. Same sort of thing with kind of bookmarks. Maybe just put them into a folder so nobody can see that, because you know that this is going to be visible to your audience as well. So just be mindful of things like that in general. Also think about whether video is going to work. Is the video going to be coming through your computer audio? If not, is it going to be coming through your microphone? And then is it going to sound a little bit kind of tinny? Is it going to sound a little bit muffled? That's not really the best experience that you're providing for your audience there. So you want to consider what's kind of the logistics around that for you to kind of improve it. Think about also audience participation. How are you able to get that? So you can see with YouTube, we are getting audience participation, and we have the facility of the live chat for that purpose. But if you're kind of running online presentations through video calling platforms like Google Meet, then you can people can kind of just message in the chat box, or they can raise a hand and then they can ask a question. You can make it interactive in that way as well. And also think about kind of the ease of use of various online presentation platforms, and also the cost. How much does it cost you? Will it cost anybody to kind of sign up or log in or anything like that as well? So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or questions. So a question here from Kakwo has asked, how do we know which fonts work for our audience? I'd say always base this upon your own kind of judgment. Maybe get kind of like a friend or a family member, someone in your support network, to say, what do you think of this? Look at this from a little bit of a distance. What do you think of this? Does this one kind of work well? Does Google fonts work well? Does Times New Roman, does Arial, does it kind of work well for you? Is it easy to read? If they say, I'm not too sure, try a few out, see what works. You don't necessarily need to get the font right straight away, but it's always nice to kind of get that external opinion, because that will kind of get you to where you want to be, which is having an easy to read font quicker, because sometimes we get in our own head and we think, yeah, this looks fine, I can read this. But then somebody else who's looking at it from a fresh perspective might think, no, it's a little bit tricky for me to read that going forward as well. So yeah, definitely look to kind of get people involved where possible. So thanks very much for that question there, Kakwa. So let's round off this session just looking at how we can sort of boost our presentation skills. An important question that we want to ask ourselves is, what kind of presenter will we be? Now, this can seem quite sort of an abstract question for us to kind of answer, right? But the way that I would answer this is, in terms of what kind of presenter we'll be dependent upon how many people that we're presenting to and the type of audience that we are presenting to. So we want to think about the word adaptability. So we want to be able to adapt to our audience. So when I kind of typically present on webinar sessions like this, my kind of presentation style will be different to how I present in front of 100 people at a university lecture theatre, and that would be different to how I present in front of 35 people at a community centre, because there's always kind of going to be different audiences. So we want to make sure that we're always kind of being adaptable. Now, whether we are presenting to 10, 15, we can see online there's 26 people who are tuned in for this for this webinar session right now, or whether it's you are presenting to 100 people, 1,000 people. Essentially, what you want to keep in mind is that we want to treat everyone like an individual, and we want to turn crowds into conversations, because that's what they generally are. That's what a presentation is all about. Is about a conversation, rather than kind of just saying, right, this is what you do, this is what you do. It's about kind of creating that kind of conversational style. People are more receptive to a conversational style as a presenter than they are with you kind of being a straight kind of teacher style, I guess, in general. Now, you want to encourage audience participation where possible. So ask questions, but you don't want to talk to your audience non-stop. And that kind of goes in line with timekeeping. Very important factor of presentation is timekeeping. So naturally, you will have kind of a finite period of time for you to deliver your presentation. So you want to be in line with that. I'm sure many of us have had this kind of scenario, because I sure have. I'm sure Teta has before, is where you're kind of presenting, and because you're nervous, you talk at like you might have kind of seen on YouTube. You can kind of speed up the video by like kind of 2x or 10x or 5x, right? And we kind of go into that mode because we're nervous. We just want to rattle through everything that we need to talk about, and then we have like maybe 10 minutes at the end. We're like, oh, I've gone through it a little bit too fast here as well. And I'll talk about pacing coming up shortly in a moment, but it's very important just to be mindful of time at all times in general. So don't kind of talk to your audience non-stop, but also be appreciative when questions come through. Follow up on questions. Don't make the answer up. That's the surefire and quickest way to actually lose trust with an audience, is to make something up, because the chances are there's probably somebody else in the audience who actually knows the answer, the correct answer, and they might just think, yeah, that wasn't a good play, or it wasn't a good move by that presenter to make something up on the spot. So if in doubt, just say, look, I don't know the answer. Let me go and find out for you. Let's have a chat at the end of this in-person session, or if it's kind of online, do you have a facility to maybe contact that person afterwards? Then that's fine going forward as well. And also think about listening. Active listening is great. And it's important to always be kind of listening in on what your audience are saying, what they're looking to maybe get out of your presentation perhaps as well. Now, a few of the tips when it comes to presentation skills is something I mentioned earlier on, was to kind of tailor your story to and kind of adapt your story to who you're presenting in front of. So it kind of goes in line with kind of, as I mentioned, with like my science teacher, who kind of adapted to the types of students that were in his class at the time. Something which I found as a really useful tip when I first started kind of public speaking and presenting is, especially when it came to slides, is try to remember up to 3 things per slide. This is really useful when it comes to settling some of those nerves. So you can see there's 3 things on this particular slide to kind of talk about, but there might not always be 3 things. It might be 1 thing or 2 things, or there might be 15 things, but just try to remember up to 3 main points that you want to get across per slide. Once you've mentioned those, if you have time, elaborate on them. Think of it like kind of you've got a tree trunk, or you've got 3 tree trunks that you kind of have to mention, and then you've got different branches coming off each one of those, and kind of talk about them if you've got time. If you don't, skip and kind of move on going forward as well. And also you can see here, pause. it's always nice to kind of take a breath. Sometimes, as I mentioned, we do kind of rattle through, especially when the nerves try to get the better of us. Take a breath. It's great to kind of recalibrate at times, especially if we're not sure, especially if we need to kind of have a little bit of a glance at kind of time as well. Just to kind of take a breath where possible. Now, your voice is a powerful tool, and I'm sure that Mariah Carey would agree with that. So think about kind of your volume. So sometimes you can speak at a high volume because that shows you're excited about what you're discussing, which is great. But then sometimes you can use kind of low volume to kind of get people's attention. So, right, okay, everybody, I'm going to be telling you a story. I'm using a lower voice, so you actually have to listen up a little bit more. Maybe your ears kind of coming closer to your screen right now as well. So you can use volume to your advantage. We've already spoken about kind of style and how it's adaptable to your audience. Think about tonality. So I could have maybe gone through this presentation, this webinar session in a monotonous kind of robotic voice throughout, but a lot of you probably would have fallen asleep. So it's nice to kind of switch up the tone, switch up how you kind of speak. So you can maybe kind of speak in kind of a higher pitch tone and then kind of bring it down at times as well. And pacing is very important. And pacing is important from a time aspect. So there might be kind of certain slides if you are kind of going to be using slideshow presentation software out there to kind of get your points across. There might be certain slides which are very quick to kind of go through, which is fine. And then you've got other slides which you can take your time over as well. So kind of that's something which you'll get into your groove, and I'll mention later on how we can sort of get into our groove with pacing in general as well. Now, also think about your body language. Think about kind of the non-verbal cues that we tend to kind of have. So if I was to kind of talk to you for the rest of this session, like arms folded, just looking around, not even looking at you through the webcam, I'd probably come across as maybe a little bit sad, disinterested, maybe a little bit nervous, kind of untrustworthy perhaps as well. So non-verbal cues is very important. So maybe you have kind of an open posture, and that's something that will really kind of help to even kind of provide confidence. And speaking of confidence, power poses, you might have heard of power poses. It's a great way of kind of tricking your mind to thinking that you're more confident than you actually are. And I remember doing this for a presentation, which is very kind of important. There's a large number of people I was presenting in front of. And yeah, I was just kind of there in the bathroom, kind of 2 minutes before. I kind of went into my full Wonder Woman, kind of like really kind of like tricked my mind into thinking I was actually confident. And that really helped get me through that particular presentation going forward as well. There's actually a really good TED Talk presentation by Amy Cudder that you can check out, all about power poses if you want to kind of find out a little bit more and then look to kind of implement them yourself going forward as well. Now, in terms of kind of body language, think about your stance. And there's obviously this kind of more appropriate when it comes to kind of in-person sessions. So how you're kind of standing, your feet are grounded. Are you crossing your legs? Because that kind of shows maybe you're a little bit kind of closed off. Think about your movement. So I know when I'm presenting, especially in person, sometimes I tend to use my hands a little bit too often. So I just tend to put one hand in my pocket and then just use the other hand to kind of elaborate on points. That's just something I found over time. I'm maybe kind of moving around a little bit too much, and connecting as well. Eye contact is very, very useful, especially in person. And obviously also even kind of through webcam, try and look at, you know, look at the actual lens as opposed to, you know, like what we do on kind of video calls. We generally look at the screen because we want to look at other people. But when we're talking, it's nice to kind of actually address the lens itself, because that's what people are going to be seeing on the other end as well. So always think about kind of the experience for our audience at all times as well. Now, as I mentioned, with all these kind of presentation skills, including things like pacing, the way in which we can kind of get refined and the way in which we can kind of be the best version of ourselves as a presenter is to practice, practice, practice. Now, you could either do this in front of a mirror, or if you're comfortable to do so in front of a friend or a family member or someone in your support network, that's fine. But the more that you practice, the more refined you get as well. And the more you'll find that if you're delivering something on a regular basis, you'll know pacing wise when you can speed up, when you can slow down going forward as well. So just kind of wrap up on kind of voice, adapt ourselves to our audience. Think about our kind of voice in terms of kind of tonality, think about kind of volume as well, think about our pace, consider our body language as well, what that's saying, and kind of all those kind of non-verbal cues that we give off to our audience, and always kind of practice your performance before you kind of go ahead and do that going forward as well. So let's have a final wrap up on questions, if there are any coming through. I can't see any questions. So let's kind of roll into your next step. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar session, Definitely check out Google Career Certificates. Fantastic tool to check out. So these are free, flexible online training programs in a variety of topics which Google have identified as being high growth and high demand career sectors, such as IT support, project management, data analytics, and user experience design. And there are other ones that you'll find on the website. And you can kind of enroll onto these via kind of scholarships if you are based in the UK. So definitely check out this resource when you get a moment. So apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you. I hope that you found this session useful. If you did, both myself and Tessa would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form link here on screen, and I'm sure that Tessa will kind of drop the link to the feedback form in the live chat. Feel free to also share your experience. If you want to share your experience on somewhere like social media, feel free to include our hashtag that you can see here on screen, which is #digitalgarage. So apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you to Tessa, who I'm sure agrees has been a wonderful chat moderator. Feel free to show your appreciation for Tessa in the live chat. And thank you all for tuning into this Google Digital Garage webinar session. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.